Hey, Ben Patrick, the knees over toes guy.
The knee over the toe is more pressure on the knee, but you would struggle to develop anything in your body if you avoided pressure. It's the understanding of pressure. I was a knees wrecked case, 3 different surgical changes in my left knee, told I needed more surgery in my right knee. I'm hooked on painkillers. I don't want to have another surgery. That's when I saw a clue from arguably the most successful Olympic trainer ever, trained over 200 Olympic medalists. So like he has to get results. And so the moment I saw just in an article from this trainer, this Olympic trainer, Charles Poliquin, I knew right then and there, that was the missing link.
What was the light bulb moment that you thought, well, maybe we should have just a little bit?
It was really just understanding the basics of money, and what I was not taught in school was basic things like inflation. So understanding what Bitcoin is and understanding that as long as the government can just print money, I mean, I very firmly believe that we had it much better in the 90s. It is so tough for the average person out here that both parents have to work, even if you don't want to. Look, if you both want to work, great. I don't do the absolutes. But the fact that the people I know now, that one generation prior, the average mom had the option to not work if they didn't want to. Like if they wanted to be raising the kids more. And now the average parent is so stressed because you've got high daycare costs, but you both have to work. And now it's so hard to get a house, and your dollar's just not worth as much.
How do I get the dunk? That's what I wanted. I've never dunked in my life.
The number one thing to jump higher is...
Hey, Ben Patrick, the knees over toes guy. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you here. I'm sure it's not the first time you'll hear it, but your exercises actually changed my life. It changed the way I look at how I condition my lower body. And it's a real pleasure for you to spend some time with us talking about this today. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to hear that, and honored that you had me on. Well done on the success of your page.
I really appreciate it. Look, you came to my attention, like a lot of people, a few years ago. Do you remember how long ago it was when Joe Rogan first mentioned you on his pod?
Like 3-4 years ago, he started talking about it, doing some of the stuff. Yeah.
Was it during COVID or just after?
Oh yeah. It was during COVID.
During COVID, yeah, I thought so. And that was when I think I bought my first slant board as well.
Nice.
Awesome. All the gyms were closed and I was getting into the kettlebells and I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess the slant board is next. Now, just to give people a bit of a rundown, for the longest time, before Ben popularized it, I mean, I would credit you as popularizing it. I know you didn't invent all this stuff. Well, maybe some of the things you have, but you really popularized it, you structured it, you formatted it, and you've been a tremendous marketer of these routines, and you've put it into something that is really accessible to anyone. And I just want to emphasize that if you don't work out and you're at home, you're watching this, you're listening to this, anyone can start this, and that's a really important point to make. What was
Thank
the point?
you. Maybe you should be running my marketing.
No. I think you do a fantastic job, and I want to talk about that later on because I think we've had a similar kind of arc in the last 4 years. My page is only 4 years old.
Well done.
The account is much older because I used to use it as a sort of a lurking page. But I want to talk about the obsession it takes to actually reach the level of popularity that you have. And I know that you've got a very diligent approach to managing your page that I'd love to get into. But I want to give people a rundown. For the longest time, we've been taught that you cannot put your knees over your toes whenever you're conditioning your lower body, doing leg exercises, because, well, I don't really know why. I used to assume that it was probably because they were worried that you would have some kind of meniscus tear or some kind of ligament damage, but I never really understood why it was. But I, for some reason, used to repeat that mantra as well when giving other people tips about how to squat or any kind of leg exercise. Do you know how that became convention?
Yeah. So when you, if you think about going downhill, the knee is going over the toes with pressure on it. If you watch someone go into a deep squat, the knee's going over the toes. In the 1970s, they found that's more pressure on the knee. So it's brutally simple. they found that when the knee goes over the toes, there's more pressure. That's common sense. Someone could stand up right now and you could cause some pain in your knee. If you probably reached your knee far enough, it might hurt at some point. So that was 1970. Exercise science was really new. This created a lot of fear. Like they measured, oh wow, when the knee's over the toes, that's a position of pressure. 50 years of research now. You can now Google this, you can put it into AI. Like you can ask, like, based on all the research that's now been done, what do you think about knees over toes? And it shows that the better you are in those positions, the more protected the knee is. So actually, if you train it at a pain-free level, there's no guarantees, but you actually improve your odds of the longevity of the knee, of not needing to have knee surgeries and knee replacements by having ability in that position. So knee over toe equals pressure on knee. Be able to handle pressure on the knee. If you now avoid that pressure, you're actually more likely to get hurt. So they were correct. The knee over the toe is more pressure on the knee, but you would struggle to develop anything in your body if you avoided pressure. It's the understanding of pressure. So then turning this into levels that anyone can train the knee over the toe at some level, improve that strength. Much easier when you're a kid, much harder when your knees are wrecked. So I was a knees wrecked case, 3 different surgical changes in my left knee, told I needed more surgery in my right knee. I'm hooked on painkillers. I don't want to have another surgery. That's when I saw a clue from arguably the most successful Olympic trainer ever, trained over 200 Olympic medalists. So like he has to get results. He's the guy that they would send people to if they have the Olympics coming up and they think they won't even compete because of their knee. And he goes, no. The more ability you have in that position with the knee over the toes, the less chance you have of having the injury and the pain. And so from all I had been through, years of no knees over toes, the moment I saw, just in an article from this trainer, this Olympic trainer, Charles Poliquin, I knew right then and there that was the missing link. I was always avoiding ability. I didn't have ability. Some people have it naturally. Some people don't overdo it. I overdid it in basketball growing up and didn't do any knees over toes. So hopefully, a bit of a ramble for a few minutes, but hopefully for someone listening to that, it now makes sense as a subject. Oh yeah, a position of your body that's going to have pressure, you'd want to be able to handle that pressure instead of avoiding that pressure.
How old were you when you incurred those knee injuries, and how old were you when you I guess we're in a moment of desperation and saw that article?
Yeah. 14 is when I knew the first like really bad thing happened. I didn't have surgery till 18, but 14 to 18 was like just some miserable years of life.
And they're supposed to be your best years, like when you're growing up and having fun with your friends. And
yeah. And for me, it was because I was a short kid, slow, unathletic, and wanted to be a basketball player. So in my mind, all right, if I outwork everybody, I'll be a good basketball player. So from maybe age 9, I was this obsessive little kid training so many hours a day for basketball, doing every jump program. So I overdid it really early. So in a way, it was almost fortunate that I ruined my knees so fast that I was actually still pretty young. I was like 19 when then I shifted my mindset to like, wait, I'm going to try to figure out how to be a knee expert on knees over toes, on how do you get more ability in the knees. So I was still only 19. I didn't have kids and responsibilities, and I was able to like really immerse myself in that.
So from 14 to 19, I remember those years very well. I played a lot of sport, especially being in Australia, Australian rules football, which is a very demanding physical sport. It's basically a 360-degree game, high speed, high contact, tackling, body collisions, all of that. And on top of that, you've got to be skilled with the ball as well in how you mark it and dispose of it. So I had the time of my life. I can't imagine if those years were racked with injury, especially when all the conventional wisdom was effectively withholding your effective recovery from the injuries that you had. And so there was nobody really you could talk to because they're all telling you the same thing, aren't they? And everything they're telling you is basically keeping you where you are, keeping your knees weak. And so you find this article. What did you do from there? How do you take that? Where do you gain the confidence to try the first exercise, the first movement that says, I'm going to slowly, progressively try this? How did you get that confidence, and what was the first thing you did?
So I knew he was right because of what I'd been through, but I knew that trying to get into a deep squat, I tried it and like it hurt like crazy. But there was another article from him that's still on the internet where an Olympic athlete had a knee injury and it's like 6 weeks before the Olympics. And they're not even supposed to compete. And he has this guy start dragging a sled backward like every day, just aggressively dragging a sled backward. Now, if anyone right now stands up and takes one step backward, your knee is over your toes. So by walking backward, you essentially have like a low level knee over toe exercise. And by dragging weight on the ground, you don't have the weight on your shoulders. So you can exert more vigorously in this really simple, just walking backward, uh, but with weight and get stronger with less of the trauma compared to if you just did a weighted deep squat. So actually being able to handle weight in a deep squat is a very protective thing if you do that honestly and without pain. But at the bottom of the progression, you have just walking backward, dragging weight backward. So I was the gym I was at had a rickety sled that I would take outside on concrete. It was a bit sketchy, but that was already getting some results. Sometimes I would play around with like a treadmill turned off, although I think there's better options now because gym owners often get upset at people using the treadmill turned off. But if the treadmill's off, sometimes it has some resistance. My buddy and I, because this started working well enough for me, and my best friend from high school had like terrible back problems. Like we were the guys who had to give up sports in high school, and me because of my knees, him because of his back. And within like a week of this, I called him. I'm like, we're going to be able to play again. So we became workout partners. And we would take my car outside, put it in neutral, and like take turns, butt against the back of the car, like pushing the car backward. Sometimes police would come over and be like, "You guys okay? You stranded?" It's like, "No, no, no. We're working out," as we're like, pushing the car in neutral backward. Um, but a sled is the optimal tool that was made for it by powerlifting coach Louis Simmons. So Louis Simmons he's trained these guys to squat 1,000 pounds and stuff, and he's come up with some brilliant but simple inventions of like how do you like rehabilitate an area but gently. So they're already doing these heavy weights with the powerlifting, and it was actually him observing Eastern Europeans with amazing legs and the Eastern Europeans crediting their day jobs dragging trees in the forestry industry. So he was like, these guys are dragging trees. What if we drag weights on the ground? And there you go, you have sled. And so here I am living at home with my parents, researching the internet for, how to fix my knees. And I stumble on this article of Charles Poliquin saying that he had this guy for 6 weeks backward sled daily because you can recover so fast, puts you in an easy position. So that got me off the painkillers. I reversed my way off the painkillers and then progressed from there. I studied with Charles Poliquin in person. He was used to already starting with national level athletes, and I was like a terrible athlete. So that was also a part of a blessing for me. My contribution has been more in making this stuff like easier progressions. So you can still progress to the top levels. But I now work, yesterday I'm coaching 60 to 80 high school students of different levels. The day before I'm coaching all the faculty at the school into 80 years old. So when you now have to do knees over toes training with 100 plus people ranging from high schoolers to people in their 80s, you have to get it into systems. It's got to make sense. It's got to be step by step. It's got to be super gentle.
Yeah,
Again,
I've seen your
sorry to
mum speak
ramble
with.
on this.
No, no, that's great. I love the storytelling and narrative arc. It just puts everything into such a beautiful context, because yours really is a journey. That sort of term is a bit hackneyed, but it really is a journey from personal pain and struggle to a light bulb moment, and to almost complete fanatical dedication towards popularizing the benefits that you've discovered so that everybody can as well. And I see the way that you approach how you manage your outreach with your audience. It's really a heartfelt, um, you know, a heartfelt effort on your behalf in wanting other people to benefit, just the same as you did, rather than, hey, I've got something to sell. Here you go. I mean, if people don't follow Ben, knees over toes guy on Instagram, you've just got to go and see it for yourself, and you'll quickly understand that. And you're also on Twitter, aren't you?
Yeah, so more recently, I'm writing tons of threads here, trying to make it in the ideal digestible format to learn on X.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of those. I think they're really, really handy, and threads are, I think, a great way for you to break down what you teach as well.
It's my favorite, actually. Like, as a user observing, I prefer threads over the Instagram reels and the YouTube videos because you're able to read and you're able to have visuals. You can go at your own pace, like when you're reading a book or when you're reading something with pictures, visuals. It's like silent demo videos. So I actually prefer, and a lot of people are telling me they actually like my X content better than the videos.
Do you have a spillover of followers from Instagram finding you also on Twitter?
I don't really know what the numbers are, in the sense of
No,
who.
but anecdotally, just through the commentary and that sort of thing.
It seems more like, because I don't answer all the comments, but when I make new pieces of content, at least in the first few hours, I try to stay engaged so that I see what people are asking, answer their questions. So it's kind of like I see, like, what are people feeling about this content, and how can I improve it? What questions they have. It seems mostly like people from X who are finding it for the first time. That's what
I think that's the case as well. I think there's a lot of the platforms, they seem to have a different type of person
Yeah.
that populates the platform. Like the Instagram people are very different to the Twitter people. Like the people of words and the people of pictures are very different. And you can see that the failed sort of launch of Mark Zuckerberg to launch a Twitter alternative. And it's just like, picture people can't generate content with words. And we can see the sort of efforts they make on threads. It's just not there. The quality isn't there. It's banal sort of stuff.
They're different.
Yeah.
I prefer X now that now that I've seen. I mean, I feel like the direction that Instagram has gone, it used to be more of an aesthetic platform.
Mm-hmm.
You did used to be able to post pictures or silent videos and write about it underneath. It's much more the fast-paced video content now. The algorithm is very much designed to, it wants arguments. If you've been on Instagram enough, you know that you're getting heavily rewarded for like these arguments in the comments. I don't use Instagram. So even though I have 2.6 million followers, I don't use it. I don't know what's on Instagram. I don't use it anymore. It's just doesn't help me in life. X, I can at least stay up to date on general news. I'd still say I give myself maybe a 2-minute limit to just see what's going on in the world. I do much better when it's very limited to seeing what's going on, but not scrolling. I feel like it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, you can quickly lose your mind, and before you know it, you've lost quite a bit of time to the algorithm, and it has a very it has a talent and an ability to just draw you in. And I find myself looking at things, and I've got to stop myself from engaging with it. I'm like, hang on, I'm not interested in this. I don't care, and I have to remind myself. Like, I just got to catch myself. I'm like, why am I engaging with it? They're going to give me more, and then I'll quickly go not interested, and it'll clean up my algorithm for a while. But they keep bringing it back. They keep testing you and resetting that algorithm, which I think is really kind of a pernicious thing to do, because if I've already given you a signal, you don't need to keep retesting and tempting me with all that garbage. But they do it. I mean, they're all going to do it. It's a commercial imperative, right?
Yeah. But on that note, and I have a question for you too.
Sure.
What got me to actually, because at some point, like you said, your channel's 3 or 4 years old. I mean, I don't know about you, but 10 years ago, I wasn't even on social media. Like I was just a trainer in my town. At some point, you made that leap. Now you have this huge platform with, over 1 million followers and stuff. I think it's an interesting point for people to know why this stuff even occurred. For me, it was earlier in this podcast, I mentioned how like I was always taught no knees over toes, ran into all these problems, found this Olympic trainer then found that actually if you work without pain, improve your ability with your knees over your toes. I mean, I wound up having, now I have way more knee ability than the average person. I haven't had to see a doctor in 10 plus years. I haven't had any knee problems. If you follow my page, I can do all kinds of crazy knee demonstrations and dunk basketballs and stuff. But I was doing all this stuff and rehabilitated myself enough to get a 4-year scholarship, like a full scholarship to 4-year colleges for basketball. So I had full ride. I went from no recruitment in high school to then full ride scholarships to college, all because of this subject of knees over toes, only to get there and be told there will be no knees over toes training in my gym by. So I went on different visits to colleges. No one was going to let me train with my knees over my toes, even though that was the only reason I was there to get a scholarship.
So that happened from 19, from discovering this article, then going on a sort of rehabilitation discovery, getting your routine, rehabilitating yourself to such an extent that your athleticism has improved. And
Yep.
by, what was it, 22, 23,
Yep.
you got a full scholarship to a university.
Yeah.
And then you walk into the gym and the head trainer says, not in
That's
my
right.
gym.
That's right. I remember being there and, the trainer talking about stuff. You catch up on stuff. I say how I do like these Charles Poliquin methods where I've actually gone from really weak and painful with my knees over my toes to now strong and it doesn't hurt to have my knees over my toes. And that's why I was there getting a scholarship. There will be no knees over toes training in my gym. So
Wow.
when so people competing coaches, boy, do they love to hate on me. They don't they don't know where I come from. They don't know what I've been through. Every point I see them hating on me for is actually an interesting story that I feel like someone in my shoes would do the same thing. I wanted nothing to do with social media. I absolutely hated social media. Had no plans of being on social media. Had that experience. So I turned down full ride scholarships to play basketball. The coaches are telling me, you're going to regret this the rest of your life. You're never going to get a chance to play college basketball again. You have a full ride. They're offering me money to play. We'll pay you money under the table. You're going to regret this the rest of your life. I immediately started training kids in my hometown who had knee pain. I immediately started helping other kids make progress. But they're running into the same thing. They're getting scholarships to college, and now they're being told they can't train with their knees over their toes. So to create so much life-changing results with something and then have that freedom completely taken away, it wasn't marketing genius to be called the knees over toes guy. What the hell would you call yourself? Honestly, if you were in my shoes and you finally said, that's enough, I'm going to go on social media, it wasn't some genius marketing move. So competing trainers love to think that I'm just some marketing genius who came up with this concept in my basement with no experience. No, went through all of it, got full scholarships, then denied knees over toes, then made a gym in my hometown, training hundreds of people, making hundreds of knee success stories before ever considering going on social media. And if anything, there's more of a problem now of how many people copy my content who didn't make a gym, who haven't trained hundreds of people in person, and they just jump to copying the videos. My videos were born in the school of hard knocks, going through this stuff, having my freedom taken away, and saying, I don't care what people think of my name, how ridiculous it sounds. My family, who didn't fully understand this, was like, knees over toes guy? Like, they trusted me, they supported me, but it sounded ridiculous. Yeah, I'm going to be called the knees over toes guy, and I'm sick of helping people with this and them having their freedom taken away that they can't even do what changed their life. So you can see where the passion comes from. I'm actually a super mild-mannered person. If someone says, I don't want to train with my knees over toes, you don't have to. Like, I'm just putting the data out there. I'm not a forceful person in real life. I'm actually like a super gentle trainer. I'm always telling people to, like, yeah, do a little bit less, take a day off, enjoy life. You could get a great, I train 3 days a week myself for about 45 minutes. I get all my results on that. I'm in like the 1% of dads with my kids, going to the park, playing with them in the morning, playing with them at night. I don't take ice baths. I don't take saunas. I don't take, because I'm with my kids. I don't take any joint supplements. I don't. Anyways, these are other stuff. But people assume that I must have some complicated routine and spend many hours a day and be No, I'm actually like probably the most chill trainer that I've personally ever run into. There's no morning routines. It's waking up, the dog's whining at me, wants to get walked, walk the kids. But the workouts work. Ability works for the body. And so I'll never shut up about this stuff and keep educating on it.
I think what happens you know, when it comes to a success like this, there can be a confluence of factors and many, many variables such that we can't really predict in advance what really is going to work and what isn't going to work. And when you have a look at the people whose professions it is to predict these sorts of things, they don't have 100% strike rate. And we can take, for example, venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, right? It's their job. They're dedicated their lives to understanding what is going to be successful within the tech space. And they've seen hundreds and many, many thousands, some of them, and they still can't predict with a great level of certainty what is going to succeed and what isn't. What they do know is there's a kind of roundabout formula for, if I make 10 investments, X will fail, X will be mediocre, but maybe, just maybe one or two will hit it so far out of the park that it will not only recover everything I lost on the others, but more than make up for that and provide adequate returns for the fund, right? And these are people who, they know technology, they have enough experience within the vertical, whether it's, B2B, consumer startups, apps, whatever. They know enough about those verticals. They know enough. They've had exposure with founders, different types of personalities and everything. And yet still most of them can't beat the average. There's just a very few. And so applying that to you, there are a whole bunch of people in the industry. They look at Ben Patrick, the knees over toes guy, millions of followers on Instagram, and doing it really with something quite novel in the way that you've brought it to the consciousness, right? And so they're looking at you and trying to reverse engineer. And so there's a little bit of, I guess, first of all, skepticism and cynicism. You can't just blow up accidentally. And actually, if they had followed you for the time that I've been following you, everything is really congruent. Your story is congruent. It's congruent with your personality, the way in which you reach out to people. You do the work. You are responding to people in the comments all the time from the very first days. En masse, you're doing the work. Everything is congruent with the way that you even propose your propositions for like coaching and product sales and all the rest of that. And your personality shows through in everything that you do. And so when they're looking at it like, how do I replicate this, or how do I justify why this guy succeeded and I haven't been able to blow up to that extent? But you're right, like knees over toes would have been the most ridiculous name 6 or 7 years ago, before you've proven it to be a success. And it's only once something has proven itself to be a success, it's only once you've climbed the top of the tree, can it's easy to come back down because there's only one way down, but there's many ways to go up the tree, right? And so how do you, there are many, many failures within the same endeavor, the same pursuit. How many search engines were there before Google dominated the market? There were dozens, and I remember that .com era. There were dozens, and they were all trying to come up with their own ways of defining the market segment. And there were many incumbents, Yahoo, all these other companies. They had strong market positions, and so lots of people try before, and some of them are just bitter that another person comes along with a novel approach, nails the branding through sheer, I'm going to say luck, right? But I don't mean luck in the way most people use that word.
It was very luck driven. I didn't make the mistake in 1970 of mandating no knees over toes without extensively researching it. So that the problem is they mandated it, then they researched it. Now it's too late. Like the textbooks, people, a million graduates were forced to believe something that was actually backward. And more importantly, they didn't come up with a good system because it was prevented. Had that been open, let's study knees over toes, they would have come up with a lot of these same systems.
So
But
there's always a confluence of factors that lead to a success, right? And
yeah,
your branding, when I say it was luck because of your circumstances, right? Your circumstances led you to using that name without the intent that it was going to have any kind of marketing appeal. It was more or less you embracing almost like the disparagement that you endured, right? It was almost like embracing that. So, well, okay, then if that's what you're calling me to deny me a scholarship, to tell me I'm doing things wrong, but I'm getting results with dozens of people, I'm going to embrace that. And okay, that's who I am then. Whether you intended that to be like marketing hook or whatever, it ended up being that. And so post fact, people rationalize in a different way to how you arrived at that conclusion. And so, and there's jealousy about it too, right? So like we say, success has 1,000 fathers, but failure is born an orphan. So you are a success. You've made this a success. And most people in your field, they're essentially, what are they doing? Like most people who are trainers, they're effectively passing on conventional wisdom. And what you've sort of popularized and pioneered to a great extent is slowly becoming conventional wisdom. Um, and inevitably, you're going to be met with a lot of jealousy as a result of that. So
yeah.
it's very natural. I think you should wear it as a badge of honor and take it as a point of pride as well.
Yeah, for me, it was like at the time, it was more like, okay, this is a duty to do this. I didn't want to be on social media. I was very happy running my gym. I was just as happy, probably on a personal level, probably happier not being on social media and just running my gym. Now I've kind of recreated that lifestyle. I did the social, it was like COVID hit. So my gym was shut down legally. So I went online, had a kid, decided to just focus on raising the kids, doing the online. And now I'm a volunteer coach at a school. So I train 100 plus people. I train more people now per week than I trained having a gym because I'm a volunteer. So I'm training 30, 40 kids in a class all the way up to the faculty. So I'm now at my happiest point in my life because I've got all this real world, all these real people I'm working with, but then also the online. But yeah, had I gone to college, gotten this scholarship and said, "Hey, here's what I did that allows me to play. I want to keep doing my knees over toes routine," and had the coach said, "Great, that worked for you. Great, keep doing the routine that worked for you and helped you get this scholarship," there would be no knees over toes guy. I would not have gone to the NBA. I would have been able to get a lower level overseas pro opportunity because I was improving very rapidly. I was a very stable player, decent. I was 6'1", so for a point guard, that was enough. I would have played somewhere overseas. I would have had a nice long career because of this stuff. I'm in my mid 30s now, in the best shape of my life. And there just would have been no knees over toes guy. Right now, I would have probably been moving back to America after a very uneventful professional, low level professional career. I'm being honest. So if people wonder where that passion came from, it came from the direct opposition that was wrong. It's not okay to limit someone's freedom, to limit knowledge, to limit that. That was wrong. It was an injustice, and so this is how I fought back. And so that became very lucky, even down to the fact there's nothing I do content wise that has come close to Joe Rogan saying anything about it. Joe Rogan saying anything about me is 10 times more effective than my hardest efforts to market. And I think this is really the best information on the podcast because anyone can go to my pages and it's designed to help you know everything I know as fast as possible. So you can just go to my pages, see it visually. Every day I'm like going, filming, like what's the most helpful thing I can put out for people to know what I'm doing, how this works. I feel like this is the good stuff is once you get into real life. And I know what it's like in the sense of a trainer sees how I got lucky and stuff. Well, imagine my surprise when I found out how successful Bitcoin was and I was living in a knees over toes hole. And on Instagram, no one was talking about Bitcoin. I come out and I was training Jack Dorsey in Costa Rica and he's telling me about Bitcoin. And in my mind, I'm
A
like,
couple of years ago then?
yeah, so this was like 3, 4 years ago. Joe Rogan starts talking about my stuff. Now a lot of people out there who like have curiosities on these mobilities are reaching out. So Andrew Huberman calls me. He says, "Hey, Jack Dorsey and Rick Rubin, can you go train them? They want you to train them. They know that I know you." So me and Huberman go to Costa Rica. I've got my wife and kid. I have no idea what to expect. Is there going to be like, what is it? I don't know. I don't know celebrity lives. Turns out they're totally down to earth guys there, and I train them for a couple days. My kid is playing with Rick Rubin's kid. Rick Rubin's one of the best people I've ever met, and Jack Dorsey's telling me about Bitcoin, and in my mind, even as he's telling me this, I'm like, I'm not going to put a penny into Bitcoin. I'm like nodding a lot. In my mind, I was so nauseated by the subject of investing because I just feel like I want my money to be trying to do something productive. I've never been a money guy. Like the subject of money has always been a subject that is hard for me to confront. I wish I had confronted it much sooner. Fortunately, my wife is like just very good with money. So we're not super rich, but like we're thank goodness for her being interested in that stuff. And it was only from talking to him and then like understanding what Bitcoin was to be like wow, I'm not going to be one of these people who got mega rich on Bitcoin, but I love what it stands for. And so I don't do anything risky. I've never bought any other crypto. I have no other investments other than like my wife and I started with like $100,000 condo and like slowly paid it off. Like I don't want the problems that come with being super rich. I know that's crazy to say. And for a lot of people, it might be fun for you to have all that. That's just not what I want to do with my life. I absolutely love a simpler life, especially with my kids, spending a ton of time outside, having them grow up in a way that they have no concept that you need a lot of money to be happy. We're in a one stoplight town now. We spend half our day outside. We're in like a 1,200 square foot place, and we're happy as can be. So that's just me. That's what I like. But I don't have ego in it. So when I understood what Bitcoin was, it was like, oh, then I need to have some Bitcoin.
Well, let me just say that you're absolutely winning with or without Bitcoin. You're absolutely winning with your family life and priorities. I think you've got that all perfectly set straight. And I love your honesty. Like I didn't invite you here to proselytize about Bitcoin, but I'm glad you're showing some interest, because if you don't mind me asking, like, what was the light bulb moment that you thought, well, maybe we should have just a little bit?
Yeah, it was really just understanding the basics of money, and what I was not taught in school was basic things like inflation. And so looking at my own life growing up in the 90s, I worked very intimately with my parents. They had little office buildings. So they were like a really hard working crew. They owned their own business. They'd get little office buildings and make them super nice and get every office rented out and treat people great. And so I was with them, tons of manual labor for me growing up. So I knew general prices and stuff. And then over time, so understanding what Bitcoin is and understanding that as long as the government can just print money, I mean, I very firmly believe that we had it much better in the 90s. It is so tough for the average person out here that both parents have to work, even if you don't want to. Look, if you both want to work, great. I don't do the absolutes. Like if you both want to work, awesome. But the fact that the people I know now, that one generation prior, the average mom had the option to not work if they didn't want to, like if they wanted to be raising the kids more. And now the average parent is so stressed because you've got high daycare costs, but you both have to work. And now it's so hard to get a house, and it's your dollar's just not worth as much.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think together with like money printing, monetary debasement, inflation, reduced bargaining power of the worker at the table, it's really squeezed people both on the income side and from savings as well. And then we've had a whole bunch of money printed and the financialization of the housing market, which is where, a lot of people store their wealth and get home price appreciation for their retirement as well. But a lot of people can't get onto the housing market, onto the housing ladder, as we call it in the United Kingdom. And even if they do, they're buying lower quality real estate because they just don't have the money to buy premium real estate. And so the rich buy higher quality real estate that appreciates at a faster rate. And so it's really hard to just keep up. And so you've hit the nail right on the head there, because I think there's been a growing realization amongst the general population that things are hard, but they haven't all come to the conclusion about why, because there's a lot of obfuscation about how the financial system works. Now, I've got a business degree with a major in finance, right? So it's it's no big deal. It's just pretty basic undergraduate degree. But I did major in finance. I did at least 8 or 9 subjects on that. Nobody mentioned monetary debasement. Nobody mentioned that banks create credit out of nothing. I didn't understand it. They taught the old sort of way of banking working as a sort of intermediary between borrowers and savers, and making a margin on borrowing and then lending it out to people. And that was all that they told us. And none of this money creation, printing, M2, global liquidity, all of these sort of metrics that I've become a little bit more familiar with, nobody mentioned any of these things as the basis of money. And so I'm looking around the environment and I'm thinking, what's happening to the housing market? There should have been a crash. And, prices really didn't crash for the last 20 years, in at least where I've been living. They had a small dip, short-lived, and then the money printer kicks into action and prices just jump up again. I'm like, hey, what's going on? People are losing their jobs. How come the housing market's recovering? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so we've got a sort of bifurcated economy where people with capital are doing extremely well through the financialization of the entire economy, but people who still rely on their labor for a wage to pay for everything, actually, they're struggling. And it's at a scale now where it's never made any sense to me, but it no longer makes any sense that you can say it's a failure of the individual for not being innovative or enterprising enough that they can't command a wage. That doesn't make sense when you've got the entire middle class being hollowed out, right? So the middle class is always supposed to be like the jewel of every nation. The bigger the middle class, the more prosperous it is, the more stable the nation is, the healthier the domestic economy, and everything else sort of flows from there. At least people who are on lower incomes can aspire to being grouped within that, right? The social mobility. And then, the wealthy people, well, the worst comes to worst, your children will be middle class. That's not such a bad thing, right? And if you've got a healthy, thriving, stable middle class, that's a big achievement for a country. I think most of the world aspires to that. But, in the Western countries that I'm familiar with, United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, to a much, much lesser extent, because we've got the mining resources boom that thankfully China has a strong demand for. And it's a smaller country with a greater sense of, unity and fairness than the United Kingdom and the United States. But I see what's happening in the United States. I've seen the graphs. The middle class is getting absolutely screwed. So there's nothing for the lower income people to aspire to, because, there's not much of a middle class. And so if you don't have that, suddenly society becomes very open to destabilizing forces. And I don't mean from an external point of view. I mean, internal pressures start mounting up. People start becoming desperate. And so I think you're right to point to, earlier times that were actually, in reality, a lot better and a lot easier for people. And it makes it all the worse when you consider that the people who are in charge still are the generation that benefited most from policy directed at them, which is the baby boomers. And they're essentially keeping everyone at bay. They're keeping everyone poor in servitude. And I'm not a big fan of them, to be honest, as a generation. I know many boomers who are lovely people, but as a generation, uh, they are an absolute disgrace. And the sooner they're gone, the better for the world. Honestly, like I'm really at that point. It's time for them to go, and I mean that in the literal sense. Yeah,
And with my mind, it's always as hopeless as it sounds. It's like, what can we do about it?
yeah,
And that was why I got into Bitcoin, because I first had the initial impression of Bitcoin doesn't do anything, and I see people on X who are against Bitcoin who have that opinion. And guess what? You're actually right. The difference is your dollar does less than nothing. So it is a necessary invention to have some agreed upon currency. And that's why I'm only Bitcoin. I'm not saying that there can't be lots of other things that could be done with crypto. I'm not an expert. I want the simplest life possible where I have the least attention on money. And if they couldn't print dollars, then I would not be into Bitcoin and there would be no need for Bitcoin for me, for my purposes in life. I'd rather have a simple, much simpler life, not be playing the game of how to make the most money, which is its own subject. So I'm not an expert on how to make a lot of money, but Bitcoin to me doesn't do anything. However, the dollar does less than nothing. And so it's a if you have an agreed upon currency that can't be reduced in value.
yeah. I think that's precisely the point. Is that the whole point of Bitcoin is monetary debasement, right? They're printing money at will, and that devalues the dollars that or the currency that you hold. And we have a meme: one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, right? It can be a bit trite, but it's really true. Whatever you have, however many Sats you have, however much Bitcoin you have, it will always be that much as a percentage of the total. No one's going to create new Bitcoin. It's just not going to happen, right? And so, essentially, there's a formula. It's everything there is and everything there ever will be divided by 21 million Bitcoin, right? It's a fantastic meme. I'm trying to remember who came up with that, but it's so true. And what we know is above that line in that formula, the politicians will not resist the temptation to go to the money printer at convenience. Whenever there's an emergency, it will be their go-to method for priming the pump and keeping the economy going, so to speak. And as a result of that, I take great comfort in knowing that, okay, you decide what your move is, and I know what that's going to be. I've already decided what mine is, and that's Bitcoin. It's not going to change, right? So whatever they throw down, I feel safe. I have a peace of mind, and I don't feel the need to scurry and play investment manager. And in fact, because we are so early in the adoption curve of Bitcoin, in terms of, I think the last cycle where I sort of got in was the thin edge of the mainstream adoption wedge, and I think we're just about to enter the thicker part of that, where mainstream will be onboarded through basically Wall Street marketing. They'll see the government start buying it. Once the United States does, we're already seeing that there are other countries are having conversations, but there's still a bit of trepidation. Is this just a Trump thing or is it a United States thing? I don't really care either way. I think the signaling is great for corporate America. We've already seen more adventurous hedge funds get into it from about 2019, 2020. Some of the more independently managed companies started getting into it. And now we're seeing like daily announcements of such and such company buying Bitcoin for their treasury. So we can see that adoption curve is starting to accelerate in the institutional and corporate financial sphere. So we can see that's happening. And as a result of that, I think it will do more than just offset monetary debasement. That adoption curve, I think, will increase the price of Bitcoin quite a lot for some time to come. But yeah, you're right. It's not going to be the same as the guys who bought sub 100, sub 200, that sort of thing. Are you going to get wildly rich from Bitcoin? I don't believe so, but I think a lot of people will make money if they're patient. If you hold Bitcoin for 20 years, I think it'll take care of your retirement. I do. But you've got to find something else to do in the meantime. You can't just sit there and watch your Bitcoin. You got to participate in society. You need to find a purpose in life that generates an income. You've got to be a productive member of society. And I think there are some Bitcoiners who simply think buying Bitcoin, sitting there and watching it is really enough, and it's not. It's not enough. You haven't done anything with your life if that's all you're doing. And if you bought early enough, sorry, go on.
I mean, and even if that's working for someone financially, you still got to find something that gets you fueled to wake up in the morning.
Sure.
It's a brutal trick of this life that we think that if we then just had enough money, we'd be eternally happy, and it's so hard to understand because it sounds so simple, but a day is long, man, and there's a bit of a human drive to help other people, to uplift people around you. So you still got to find something to, like for you, even I'm sure it hit a point where you felt like it gave you a purpose to educate people on Bitcoin.
100%. And that's precisely what drove me, and why the way you operate resonates with me. It really does, because when I quickly realized, there was something here with this account, I think it's going to grow, it's going to become exponential. I had to have something that kept me focused on, because it's quite tedious work, right? So you go to university hoping to graduate, maybe get a job somewhere and do some high level work that's intellectually stimulating. And I guess you don't know my backstory, but essentially, like I was just heartbroken when I entered corporate world, absolutely just shattered with the Machiavellian nature of everything, the pettiness of everything, the limitations, and how people were just really, politically protecting their asses most of the time rather than trying to get something done. And, I'm an idealist by nature. I try to aspire to things, and I think the best of people as a reflex. At least I did very much so back then. I had no sort of defense mechanism for dealing with social interactions. I just dealt with people on face value with good intentions and best foot forward sort of thing. And so anyway, after that, I'd pretty much spent how much? 15 years sort of just meandering with self-imposed mediocrity in corporate life, just a contract here, a project here, that sort of thing. And it kept me out of the whole political process because no one cares. I'm a consultant or a contractor. I'm coming and then I'm going. And I'm not in the political game. I don't have performance reviews. That was fantastic. And so I didn't have to bother with all of that. And I did quite well out of that for a time. But, not being aware that there are also limitations to that because I was enjoying the life. I came to London. I enjoyed different cultures in London here. And really, I was just enjoying being in a fantastic international city that was on the doorstep of Europe. And then COVID came. And to be honest, I should have seen the writing on the wall just before COVID, but I wasn't sure if it was just a tough market for a year or so or whatever. I just didn't really understand what was happening. And then COVID came and I pretty much knew like my career was over because there were no callbacks, there were no jobs that I wanted. There was just nothing in the market. And the strange thing was I just had no sense of panic or anything. It was just, I was absolutely fine. And I knew that the savings I had, okay, I was going to spend that. I knew that. But then I realized like I had no plan beyond that. I thought I was going to do that for a while. And then I thought, because I love coffee and I love writing and I love photography. And I thought, you know what, I'll take solace from my passion in art and I'll run a coffee shop because prior to my business degree, I had a career in hospitality management and I know how to run a restaurant or a coffee shop or a hotel. I know how to do that. And I thought I'd just buy a coffee shop and do my writing in the morning, run the coffee shop in the afternoon, do all the administrative work in the afternoon, and that would be my life and just ride off into the sunset like that. Didn't work out that way. And believe me, I've tried many endeavors before. And with my business education, I thought I could plan everything to the T and, have a business plan and cash flow projections and this and that. And they all failed miserably because I didn't get the initial concept right. And it just goes to show that you can think you're planning everything, but you can't really plan success. What you can do is try to eliminate known risks, but there are all sorts of variables that you just can't quantify. You're often not even aware of things. And when you're so motivated to start something, you can't even have the awareness of whether or not something as simple as timing is right, because you're motivated already. You're going to have such a strong bias towards action. And so you just don't know. You could have a great idea, but the timing is wrong. You're still going to fail. You're going to go broke. You're going to lose money. And so, I did a bunch of things that I experimented with. Some of them were ill-conceived. Some of them were very well executed. And then I ran out of money because I didn't realize, you need about 60 grand a month to market these for it to be viable. And it was like, and this is something that you do, that you discover once you're deep headlong into something and it's too late. And so COVID made me realize that, okay, that part of my life was over. What do I do now? And I remember in 2017 when Bitcoin had that enormous parabolic run. It went from hundreds to 20,000. And I remember walking into a coffee shop. A barista friend of mine said, "Hey, have you seen Bitcoin?" And, Bitcoin was something I completely forgot about, right? And it was still in my mind something that was a kind of speculative new thing, and I wasn't all that interested in it. And I just said to him, "Have you got some?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, you better be careful. It's very speculative. It's very volatile and whatever." And this was like 3,000 or 4,000. I come in a few days later and it's like over 10,000. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then, it had its peak at 20,000 and then it started crashing. And at that point I said to myself, if it doesn't die after two massive parabolic runs, like the first bull market, I think it broke $1,000 or something. And then it came down to, I don't know what it was, 100, 200 or whatever it was. And then it went up to 20,000. I think if it doesn't die now and it's just going higher after each successive cycle, there's got to be something to this that proves that it's got some staying power to me. And I don't know too much about it, but just the fact that it didn't die after those two cycles, it says there's something here. And so after COVID, the crash, I started watching it about 3 or 4 months after the recovery, because it still didn't even occur to me during the market crash that it would be a great opportunity to buy Bitcoin. I was still watching it. And I'm like, okay, I'm not really committed. And then October was when I bought, just as it was sort of breaking out into its huge parabolic bull run. And within 6 weeks of buying the first lot of Bitcoin, I was all in. And I'd been watching sort of the Twitter community for about 3 months then. I was just sort of waiting to time my entry into Bitcoin as a trade only, really. And then January 2nd, 2021, I started posting the news as Bitcoin Archive, just to see, just to participate, just to have something to do. And the thing that I kept in mind, so on the first day, I realized I probably got about 200-300 followers on the first day. Maybe it might have even been only 150, but something like, and I just thought, wow, if I just do that every day, I get 150 followers. I'm like, that could eventually grow into something. What? I didn't know. I didn't have any plans for anything. And I was, up until 2 weeks ago, I was completely anonymous. Nobody knew who I was. So this podcast thing is a new thing for me. It wasn't planned at the start. I had no intentions for it. The only thing I would do was just serve the community. That's all that was the mantra I had in my mind. Just be of service to the community, add a little bit of value to as many people as possible. And that was the only thing that I kept in my mind and I was so fanatical, so obsessed with not just finding the news, but finding it first. I had to be the first. And I did that for 16, 17, 18 hours some days, every day for nearly year and a half at least, before I took a few days off. Like by the time I took any kind of time off or thought I could relax and I didn't have to watch just let the phone sort of sit there for, no, I reckon it would have been at least 20 months by the time I did that from the first day I posted. I got I got fat like for the first time in my life because we had one of those lockdowns and I was literally doing this day and night, and I didn't think it would be possible for me to put on that kind of weight. Like I'm a similar sort of frame and build to you, right?
You look like you're in great shape now.
Oh, thank you. Now I do work out. I'm quite diligent about my health and all that sort of stuff. But like we're similar sort of size and shape. So if you can just imagine that over 3 months, right, you don't do any real workout because you're obsessed with this. So imagine how much muscle you would lose and then add 15 kilos on top of that. And we know it's all composed of fat, right? And so your jeans stop fitting you. Like I've got a 32-inch waist, 32, 33-inch max, and you can't fit into those. When I tighten my belt, it's like the fourth buckle, right? But I was on the last one in 3 months. Like I had no idea. And by the time I went to the gym, like after the lockdowns were over, I got into the gym and I've got my tops on and I'm like, actually, this is pretty funny because I'd never experienced it before. I didn't feel any kind of self-consciousness about it, which surprised me. I thought I would, but I just felt like this is a temporary thing. It's going to go, but I'm really looking forward to this challenge and what the challenge of losing weight is going to be like, because I'd always grown up pretty sort of skinny, wiry, athletic sort of guy.
Yeah.
This was a new challenge. So, that's the thing that sort of kept in mind, that kept me focused.
Yeah. And how'd you get in shape? Someone else is probably listening right now who's in that same spot right now.
I did work out hard. So my baseline is to work out pretty much just every day. 6 days a week is pretty normal for me to work out, right? And that's been the case. I just can't ever remember not doing that. I've always just done something. And, in the weeks that I don't work out 6 days a week, let's say for whatever reason, I'm only doing like 2-3 days a week, I will have long walks on those days off. And we're talking like, 10 kilometers, which is about 6 miles or something like that. So I'm always doing something. But the way I lost the weight was I added 20 minutes on the bike to my regular weight workout. And if I felt good enough, I might do another 5 or 10 minutes afterwards. And we're not talking like at a high intensity. It was just to get the body moving, just to burn some extra calories. I knew that it would have to be a gradual weight loss. And so I put all that weight in three months, and it probably took me 3.5, 4 months to say, okay, I am back to normal now. But yeah, it generally takes about as much time to put it on and take it off. So that was pretty easy for me because I already had the habit of working out. And so I don't eat all that badly, but during that COVID lockdown, I did snack quite a bit and didn't really eat all that well, but that fanaticism cost me. So that experience I had in building my account, in replying to just about every single comment, liking people who engaged with me, to give them that feedback because, they're giving me something and I want to make sure that they feel like they're part of my community as well and they've got my attention. And in the early days, I pretty much did that every single tweet to hundreds. In a day, I probably would have responded to 300 or 400 comments easily and probably liked 1,000 or 2,000.
Over years, hundreds of thousands of
there's no doubt about that. And so I wanted that because I wanted them to feel like they were part of my community.
Yeah.
And I was really grateful for them for giving me that support in the early days. And so there are some people now, I will go back just, when I'm searching for something and I will find an old tweet of mine from like the first month and I'll go into the comment and I'll recognize the account because they still engage with me to this day. And it's like, oh, he's still around. He was there back then. That was amazing because it's such a blur. I want to ask about how, because you've been public as Ben Patrick from the start, right?
Yep.
Maybe you didn't tell people your name, but you were in
front of the camera. Name was listed there. Ben Patrick, knees over toes guy. Yeah.
So, like, how did you deal with the growing fame and everything? Because this is the fame part of it. Within a niche, I guess this podcast will be reasonably well sort of viewed. I was always sort of hesitant to reveal myself because I didn't want my private moments to be interrupted. I can be a little bit cantankerous if I'm just, you know, if I'm sort of in a moment and someone's not too pleasant, I'll probably bite back, you know, that sort of thing. How did you deal with that, the fame initially, and then as it grew and scaled, has it changed at all?
So I've been fortunate, I guess deep down, whether people like me or not, they know I'm trying to help, and it really has helped so many people that for me, it has been priceless. I mean, it's so cool when people come up to you and they're like I go to the I'm in a one stoplight town, but we go into like the town, it's still a small town, but where there's like coffee shops and stuff. Um, there's not even a coffee shop in my town. It's just like a little trailer, and you just walk up to it, and like so we go into a coffee shop, and there's these college guys there, and I can tell like, oh, they recognize me, and one of them comes over, and he's like, and I'm there with my wife and kids, and he's like, you don't understand. He's like, you changed my life. I had this knee injury, and then was trying to play my sport, and then found your stuff, rehabilitated, got faster than ever. Like this was like he couldn't believe it. He had like just come from the gym doing my workouts, and I'm going to meet up with him tomorrow and work out. Um, but this has happened hundreds of times where people come up to me and they're like, "You changed my life." So come on, I mean, that's like to have that happen. Like I've gotten more out of this life than I ever could have hoped for. I still get chills. If it's in a bigger city, sometimes like I'll just hear a car honking, you hear like knees over toes, and like I don't know who it is, but it's just like just hold up, you know, the peace sign. Like so for me, it's been awesome. I'm always worried that I'm going to jinx myself, but in hundreds and hundreds of times of people recognize me, I've never had someone say something mean ever. So I think if the I think that probably reflects like I genuinely am trying to put out content to like actually try to power people up and help them. And I never make a content about somebody else. I never put down somebody else. So I have my own internal rules that like, for me, the goal is to have the content do well with no arguments in the comments. And the easiest way to go viral is to get an argument in the comments. And if I see an argument in the comments or like a lot of arguments, I'll sometimes take down posts that are doing well because I'm not trying to have it go viral for people arguing in the comments. I'm trying to have it do well because that data people can genuinely use and help themselves. And so they'll share it to other people. So there's a way you can still go viral even without the argument. So I think it's like, so it starts internal because some people say like, yeah, man, if you don't have haters, you're not trying hard enough. Like that's true. But then sometimes I see the people making that statement and they're inviting hate. They know what they're doing. They're trying to stir shit up. And then they're using that statement as a justification of them stirring up arguments. So if I don't want confrontations in real life. I want a simple life. I want to be left alone. So I haven't had like negative experiences in public, but I think it starts internally. And if anything, I regret times early on where I didn't give enough context, or maybe I was a bit aggressive with how I said it. Like the only things I regret are times that I wasn't nice enough. Um, I've come a long way with that and observing it, and even things like there's a lot of norms in social media, and to I've tried to do things in a way that I feel really good about it. I've got over 1 million YouTube subscribers. I never turned the ad money on. So people said your page will not grow unless you click the ad money on because YouTube wants those ads. I just don't want someone watching a drug commercial before learning how to exercise with me. I'd rather get a trickle down effect of like if you're really impacting people's lives, enough is going to come back to you. Like you're going to have enough supporters. So it also starts from the onset for me. It's not like a how much game. It's like how well. Because if people out there, I'm coaching 100 plus people in real life. My gym was built on real life. Like this was already valuable and working. It wasn't speculative for me. Like if someone knew what I knew, the other trainers that I trained, creating great jobs, helping people. Like, so if I could just get what I know into somebody else's head and do that enough times, like enough is going to come back to me. But there was different learning. Like once I had kids, I realized I couldn't answer everyone anymore. And I hired friends of mine to help me answer people, but then quickly found out I didn't feel good about, even if it was just a little mixture, even if it was still mostly me, I didn't feel good that someone out there is going to be answered thinking it's me and it's not me. So like if I could go back, I would erase that. So yes, if I answered you, it was probably me because we're talking 90+% of the time. But like there was a period where it was like I wanted people to get answered. And so I hired close friends to help answer, learn everything I do. They were still giving amazing answers, but it wasn't me. I just didn't feel good. And you would be surprised that on X, I know for a fact that a lot of the top fitness accounts, they don't even write their own threads. I was stunned to find even friends of mine. And I remember reaching out to a friend and saying, hey, this way that you titled this video, that's dishonest. You know how the title will be like, do this one thing and you'll never have back pain again? Like that's not that like people can make I've had people do content about me and make headlines that I have to reach out and say, no, I've never titled a video, do this one exercise and you'll never have knee pain again. That's a misleading statement. So I've reached out to friends and been even shocked to find, and sometimes they're like, oh wow, I didn't even write that thread. That's you with your face on it. What? Like I was stunned to find not only are most top fitness people, is it not them answering, it's often not even them writing their own content, making their own statements to the world. It's been it's been a journey. So
That's quite bizarre to me because the whole purpose of having an online presence as someone who is an expert in a field is that you are putting out your own content. Like it's an outreach on your by yourself to your audience. It's not like, you put out a recording and anyone can engage with that and use that any way they want. But unless you're writing it in a certain way that makes it obvious, um, that's a bit strange to me. I think I agree with you about the dishonesty of that. Um, I didn't realize that that happened in the
you'd be stunned that some of these most viral threads in fitness that the person themselves isn't writing it and they hire someone to spend the time to write
Yeah,
it.
see, then they're never going to have their finger on the pulse and the connection with an audience in the way that you do. Oh, sorry. If they do that once they've already scaled, it may be able to persist. But are you going to start and grow an account and scale it using those methods? I just don't think you're going to have the same connection with your audience.
I think it can work for a time, but I definitely see that long term, they're, you know, long term, doing the right thing seems to pay off in a variety of ways, even being genuine, like Elon Musk on this platform, like I had so much respect that even if he posts something he shouldn't or this or that, but like I just respect at least he's trying to get in there and do it. And I've also like come to the conclusion like I don't even judge people. Like I've made mistakes. So even if I see something that I disagree with and I think it's a mistake, I've made mistakes. So I don't judge them. I just observe and I've continually come to the conclusion like I'd rather grow slower, I'd rather be smaller, but do things in a way that I feel like rock solid about what I'm doing. And then the people I've met who are really happy versus ones who aren't as happy, there's a lot of successful people out there who are not happy. And that's like pretty eye opening when you go spend time, just because of being the knee guy. I've trained so many of the most famous people in the world and I don't post about it. It's just kind of like, is I did that more early on because I just was like so new to it. I was like, I couldn't say, I felt bad to say no. Now I've said no to a lot of the most famous people in the world just to stay at home. Like if I wanted viral content, I would just tell you the people I've said no to going to train. That would go viral. But I would feel terrible about posting something like that. So that's kind of so yeah, I turn down so much to just do what I feel right about. And I feel right about being the best dad I can be and having the content do well on its own merit of how helpful that content is. And so, yeah, for a good long time now, on any platform, anything written by me, a title, a comment, a DM, anything, it's only me. And I am not in the DMs closing people. I don't have time for that. So I'm sure you've been through it. You said you were working 16, 18 hours. Dude,
Yeah.
I was doing the same thing at first, but it was once I had a kid, I just realized like I would rather like look back on my own childhood. I was so grateful my dad was taking me to the baseball park, taking me to the basketball court. Like, so having a kid shifted a lot for me that I actually am like, that has changed my integrity considerably. Like, I thought I had high integrity before, and in many ways still had elite integrity. I told
How,
my
how,
YouTube,
how did you focus more on, or how did you level up your integrity as a result of the kids? What are the questions that pop up in your mind and the reminders that sort of force that function a little bit?
good question. Right off the bat, pretty obsessive on honesty. So if I'm how I'm writing something, how I'm titling something, making sure that no one's ever misled to think that I'm answering them if it's not me. So I put, if you scroll Twitter fitness a bit, you'll spot so many lies in how people title these things. Like not misinformation lies. No, no. I'm talking about like the three things you have to do for that's not true. Like you don't have to do that. Like, so just the way that people are titling things right off the bat, they really, it's a trend on YouTube, on X. There is like a global social media disease of rampant lying intentionally to get views. The only 5 exercises you'll ever need to do, like it's just a general, they don't even realize they're doing it because it's so normal to make the absolute lies. So that's a big one for me. Is like I read through my stuff. Like, am I being 100% honest in how I'm writing, how I'm titling? Uh, that honestly, I feel like that's the number one thing. I think if you're being 100% honest in all your stuff, but once people look into it, they start to see, oh wow, no wonder I'm stressed. No wonder I'm snapping back at people in the comments. It started with your own lie. If you lie in that title, if you see people angrily commenting back to people, getting pissed off, all this stuff, every time I find a lot of lies in how they make their content.
And as a result, they get defensive of any kind of pushback or if it doesn't sort of
Exactly.
go well. Yeah, it makes a lot of
Exactly.
sense. There is a sort of, I mean, I've seen it in just our little niche over here. You know, there's a certain style of writing that I've sort of developed over the years, certain style of tweeting and commentary and whatnot that I've seen taken on, but in sort of caricature form, and it's overly hyperbolic all the time. Whereas when I'm posting something that's kind of exciting, it's typically because I am excited about something happening. The price action is exciting, and there's a little bit of buzz. And then when you see other people sort of take on that persona, but just push it to the max for the engagement, and you're like, oh, there's actually nothing happening today. Why are you so hyperbolic in your posts? But they're
Just a
just doing
form
that
of
because they've
dishonesty.
seen it work for me in
Yeah.
certain moments where it's been appropriate, and then just go, well, maybe I just do that all the time, and that's how I grow. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you wake up in the morning and don't you aren't you like, it just makes me cringe. It
Yeah.
just makes me cringe to do that. Like, so
Exactly.
there's no person behind it. There's no personality or persona. There's no finger on the pulse. It's just, oh, this is a format that works, and we're just going to max that out at all times. And it's like driving a car with your foot firmly planted on the accelerator, and you're like, this is a quiet suburban street. What are you doing? It's not
Yeah.
right.
And it's a form of dishonesty if you're making it seem different than it is. It's but again, I don't even judge the people doing that because I don't know where they are in their journey of life. Like, so I
Oh,
think it's
yeah. I know what's driving it. Look, it's a company. They've got their metrics on Monday, and they're optimizing for number of impressions, number of follows, and the person doing the job is only judged on that.
yeah,
Nobody really.
dark cloud.
Whereas people know it's me doing it, and if I did it, it would reflect on me, and I'd have to wear that cringe factor. So I understand what's going on. I just think, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, Ben, I wanted to, I guess, pull you back to some of your training principles, because I think one of the things that I really like about what you teach is the way you teach it. And when I said at the start that the real gift of everything you do is how accessible you make it to everybody, I literally meant everybody. And I love the way that you use your mum in the content as well. And, she's like bounding on the grass, running in a way that is not really common for people her age, if I may say so. But she looks fantastic doing that. So, like, do you have some principles that you can share with us um, for how you introduce certain exercises and
Yeah,
programs, and how people can progress along that curve?
absolutely.
Because, like you said, when you first did the squat, you felt a great sharp pain or discomfort, as you may have experienced. But there is a way for people to not be scared off by that, because you present it in such a way that everyone can do it in a way that they're very comfortable with from the start, and only progressively load it in a way that they're comfortable with. So there's nothing to be scared of in what Ben teaches. Everyone can start at their own level. So can you just run us through some of those principles?
Absolutely. By far, the most valuable thing I've stumbled into is, and this is how I teach almost every exercise for the whole body, any exercise. Why are we doing this exercise? And from having to teach people so many times, it comes down to this key word of balance. So let's say they're running and they're preparing for a marathon, and then their knee is hurting and they don't know why. Okay, you're putting in a certain demand that at some point that demand exceeded your ability to handle that demand. So if we took like the simplest place to start, if someone is getting knee pain running, it would actually be to have them start going backward. If you are strong enough backward, you can go forward and not break down. Now it's still a human body, so it doesn't just have absolute, like I've made a remarkable jumping transformation from roughly a 20-inch vertical to a 40-inch. It's still only 20 inches. So this is like a world-class jumping transfer. It's still a human body. So you got to be patient with it. But principally, it's this balance factor. These baseball guys throwing so hard they hurt the shoulder. Fundamentally, if they're strong enough in reverse of that throw, they then can throw hard without that thing being yanked out. In sports like basketball, boy, we go years and years and years, and our entire sport is all these jumping and high positions. By far the most valuable thing I can tell a basketball player, like my elevator pitch, 30 seconds, you got to get a lot of ability in a deep squat. It's the last thing basketball guys want to do. Your knees are stiff. You're always in these high positions. The most magical, life-changing thing for a basketball player is the last thing you want to do. It's to improve your ability in a deep squat. So if you just lived out in nature, chilling by the campfire in a deep squat, climbing up stuff, you'd probably have like a balanced body just from existing. You wouldn't do too much sitting. You'd sprint occasionally from danger. You'd be in deep squats. The body shouldn't hurt. So like if it's hurting, fundamentally, the demand you're putting in somehow is exceeding ability or deviating in this balance. If you just sit in a chair 10 hours a day, my best advice, let's figure out what's the opposite of sitting in a chair. Okay, going for a walk, moving your body, that's good. That's a start. But what about now you're sitting in a chair, you're not sitting in a deep squat. So getting into some form of deep squat. So it's things that come down that simply. Once that clicks, that the body shouldn't be in pain. So somehow, like we're lacking ability based on our lifestyle somehow. Then now we can get into the exercise progression itself. And
So
so
identify movements that create some oppositional force to the one that you're used to. So if you're running, the walking backwards, it engages oppositional forces with your hamstrings rather than quad heavy, for example. A lot of people who run, they use their quads, calves, etc. But if you're moving backwards, you're engaging your hamstrings a little bit more and your feet in a different action as well. Is that what you're saying?
when you run backward, you're engaging a lot of things differently.
Okay.
But fundamentally, you're training your knees differently. When you run forward, you're really having to like receive that impact into the knee each time. Whereas when you go backward, it's more of like an active knee exercise. Similarly, if I told you, like a more extreme example, if I told someone with knee pain to go down, like someone with really bad knee pain to go down a steep slope, that's going to be scary for their knees. But the way that you could improve that ability, imagine if you had railings to your side and you could start inch by inch walking backward up the hill. You'd be able to strengthen the very things you need to go downhill. So there's different foot muscles, there's a lot of different muscles engaged differently. Someone wouldn't even have to know those mechanics. Plenty of people have literally just run their way backward to being able to run forward again without pain. You'd also be aware that, yeah, if you run, maybe you reduce the running some. You don't have to. Like, if you have enough ability, you can handle anything, but it is still a human body. So somewhere we've got to shift that balance. So a lot of people have just done less forward running, more backward running. Then when they go back to the forward running, the pain is less or gone. And you even plateau bust, you even can get faster at forward by improving some of your ability backward because your total lower body is just stronger now. You hit almost everything in your lower body if you're going forward and backward. But then there's skills of this. If you don't have somewhere safe to run, you can do different reverse kind of step ups. There's ways, a lot of people with the deep squat, it makes sense, but based on their surgery history or injury history, it feels too different one side at a time. So this is why it's such a visual thing that I show, and I show these like incredibly low regressions. So for me, my job is almost like take the quality that we're trying to bring back that has a low ability, and then like what's the very lowest level that we could enter into that, and then gradually build that potentially to a strength. So it is, fortunately, my page is just chock full of so much better breakdowns than I can do with words.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. For people thinking, God, do I have to take these principles and discover new exercises for myself? You don't have to do that. You go to Ben's page, he shares everything. He even shares the progressions, which is what I want to go into next. Is like, if we just take one exercise, can you break down how you introduce that to someone with the minimal ability to perform that movement, and how you might progressively load them so that they can do it not only unhindered, but with some resistance as well, a weight load?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you take like I wrote one up yesterday that's doing very well as a thread. And so if you take like this deep squat, for example, and a lot of people think they don't have the mobility to deep squat anymore, usually from a long life of sitting in chairs, not being in deep squats, maybe playing lots of sports in upper positions, but not being in low positions. So if you hold weight in front of you, all of a sudden it gives you a counterbalance that you'll be able to sink deeper because of the weight in front of you. So an average starting point might be hold a 25-pound plate at the chest and reach that weight out as you squat down. And then people have lost a lot of the ankle mobility from not being in deep squats. So now you could even roll up a towel and put it under your heels. So you can often in one session, you can take someone who thinks they can't deep squat, and you can get them winning with deep squats by elevating the heels of the feet and by holding weight in front.
And so the weight helps you just balance yourself out, that because most of your weight is behind and your hands go in front, and that helps you hold your balance as you squat deeper. And then the elevated heels also does that as well. It helps counter any kind of imbalance that you might feel, because the muscles aren't really used to that if you're just doing this for the first time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's say you've always done squats and you haven't gone deep. Elevating the heels, counterbalance, these now become skills that you can use to get into a deep squat. So a progression would be like from a 25-pound plate to then a 45-pound plate, but a little bit closer, to then a kettlebell or a dumbbell, to then, if you want, even doing a bar on the front or the back. So all of a sudden now it's like, oh, you have this scale. And then you find even certain undercuts. Like if you really started from the beginning, you'd go up to the squat rack, you'd set the bar, and you'd hold on to the bar, and you'd squat down with assistance. Who says you can't go less than your body weight? And start to build up that. Start to feel the form. Like who says you can't do that? So that's how I have every single 100+ students and faculty all the way into their 80s everyone can do every single motion in my program, and that's one example. So it becomes I start by teaching them why are we doing this, so that they understand this balance factor. Like if a kid already has a great deep squat, great, let's keep it and fortify it. It's probably not going to be that life changing, but we can keep it. So it has to start being taught with the why behind it. Now for the students or faculty who have most struggled with, who think they can't deep squat, who have had lots of knee problems, that can become like really life changing to improve that ability.
Yeah, and it's really important for people who are listening and watching this that the level that you start at is not where you're going to stay. The more you do an exercise, the more likely you are to progress to the next stage. And so, I don't want anybody to feel downhearted when they attempt one of these exercises and then they compare themselves to perhaps their expectations or what they've seen other people do. The really important thing is that your body has an amazing ability to adapt, and it typically takes anywhere from 10 to 20 days to adapt to an exercise. If you repeat it enough times during the week, your body will adapt, your nervous system will adapt, your balance, your muscles engaging in the activity, in the movement will improve. And so don't lose heart from the level at which you start. The key thing is to repeat, and you will improve. Your body will adapt, and it will climb up that sort of progression ladder as Ben outlined it.
It's fantastic advice. And yeah, when I'm in a class, it's not like I'm seeing the person who progresses to the bar with great form away. I'm going, that's great right there. No, it's an even, I'm validating the intention, the focus, the form with no regard for the level.
Yeah.
But people should do that for themselves as well.
Yeah, definitely. I love the way that you do break down the progression from, like you said, a negative body weight, like with assistance, you can just hold on to something and just focus on the movement. Just focus on pushing your body down through the movement of a deep squat, get into the lowest position that you can. And if you have to pull yourself up, that's okay too, right? Because the next time you'll have to pull yourself up a little less. And then maybe in a few weeks' time, you won't have to pull yourself up at all. And then you can progress to the other levels that Ben's outlined. That's fantastic. One of the things that really impresses me, and it makes a really good video too, is every time I see you dunk, I'm like, man, that should be me. I need to get some time. I need to put the effort into doing this, because like I look at you and I'm like, hey man, I look just like this guy. He's not taller than me, because it's one of the things that everybody thinks you need an advantage in being particularly tall to dunk, right? So we're about the same height. And how do I get the dunk? That's what I wanted. I've never dunked in my life. I had a reasonable vertical leap.
Make it simple for you.
Yeah, go on.
First off, realize that jumping is the most injurious knee activity. Like if you wanted to pick an activity to hurt your knee, pick jumping. That's why it's such a good demonstration, because I'm not just here on the sideline in a physical therapy office telling you what to believe because of a study or like I can show it, I can do it. So for example, if I could, like for me, the best proof will be, what if I'm the best 50-year-old jumper in the world? That would say something as someone who reached my 20s unable to dunk. So I'm very confident that at 40, I'll be dunking even better than now. And that's simply something that's never occurred for someone who reached their 20s unable to dunk to then be like.
And to put that into context, Ben doesn't just dunk. He really throws it down. I mean, he's slamming that ball down through that ring. It is the most spectacular thing that you will see from someone who didn't know how to dunk. And he gets, do you think half your arm gets above the ring? Easily, right?
Yeah, I can get up there pretty easy, but I wouldn't, there's people actually that I've coached 5+ years ago who really then have tried to be professional dunkers or things like that, who go even much higher than me. Quite frankly, for people out there with toddlers, man, it is insane. And running a business. And also my purpose has been more on the regression side. But let's get right into the jumping, because this occurred to me in the last year or so. It occurred to me like, well, if I now actually like plan for the future and jump even higher, like take it seriously. And it's so simple to jump higher. Not perfect, but simple. Here's the basic of it. The number one thing to jump higher is the act of jumping. And that's been very well understood for a long time. The number two thing has been the most overlooked thing, and it's the most opposite thing of jumping, and it is your strength in a deep squat. And if you've played sports like basketball and jump sports, it already beats our knees up so much, especially if coaches are overtraining us and so on, that the last thing we want to do is deep squat. I mean, I'm not even just talking about the weight room. I went probably a good 5+ years of life never doing a deep knee bend, ever. I mean, just like at home, bending down to pick something up.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you've been in that situation, it's hard to understand just how bad these knees can get. But you can start to see that you take someone who's putting all this pressure on the knees, never does a deep knee bend. You're missing so much of the strengthening you can create around the knee. So it's never been explained like that before. It's been understood by certain people, but not broadly explained that number one, jump, number two, the most opposite thing of the jump, because the jump is as high and fast as you can. Number two, a low squat. And I mean really controlling it all the way down, like low and slow, improving that strength on the opposite side. Now, it's not the deep squat that makes you jump high. It's the jumping that makes you jump high. And it's the deep squat that keeps the knee supported to be able to keep trying to jump high. And it builds, jumping itself builds a ton of strength in the legs. The most room for additional improvement to the legs would be the range that's not covered by the jump. So the jump, you're not trying to bend your knees deep when you jump. It's a very shallow bend. So you have the most room to improve and strengthen by doing the opposite of that. And then the rest of the ingredients would become in relation to the deep squat. So it's like number one, jump, number two, deep squat. Everything else is now much lower in priority, but based on the same balance concept, meaning if you get the deep squat stronger, that is mostly around the knees, some hip strength, but it's not really digging into like a hamstring curl. So you'd want like the opposite of the squat. So what's the most opposite of the jump? The deep squat. What's the most opposite of the deep squat? The hamstring curl. And that's all upper thigh. So also now do some calf training. So there's basically a jump program in a nutshell. Then is the skill of the different exercises. And this is not just my idea. This is extensive study. Really the best high jumper, best triple jumper. There was a breakthrough long jumper, all three gold medalists, and they all had unusual attention to the deep squat. So you've got in high jump, Stephen Holm. Stephen Holm was 5'11" and won a gold medal in high jump. And he trained like a decade plus of deep squats, whereas like in America, high jumpers in the American high jump system, they don't deep squat. So the most unusual thing he did compared to 99% of other jumpers is he trained the deep squat with extreme priority.
And I actually do one out of those two. So I only deep squat. I consider myself, reasonably strong. I'm not a power lifter, but I'm quite happy with my 1 rep max. I want to add an extra plate onto that, but that's a different matter. How much do I need to deep squat before I can say I deep squat enough to now work on my jumping?
That is such a great question. And it's completely individual, meaning you'll find from training so many of the world's highest jumpers, you find a broad variety of what gives them enough strength in balance to the jump that the jumping doesn't hurt the knees when they go do it. So probably the more naturally great someone is at jumping, the less strength they need in a deep squat to be able to handle it. Like if you think about a Michael Jordan type physique, he's not designed to deep squat. He's my greatest basketball player of all time. But if he tried to be an Olympic weightlifter, that would be brutal. Who's the best Olympic weightlifters in the world? The Chinese. They destroy everyone by far. Their bodies are these Chinese Olympic weightlifters, much lower to the ground. The legs look like they have bowling balls, for lower quad muscles. Their teardrop muscles are the best in the world, meaning the muscle like around the knee. But they're not dominating the NBA. So there's differences. It's okay. There's different body types. So the point is that for the taller, longer tendons already can naturally jump high. Sometimes for them, even 185 pounds, being strong, being pain-free, able to do that all the way down, that's often plenty for them. Whereas then, for someone not as designed to jump, but better designed to squat, some of these guys are getting to like double body weight in the squats. And you'll see that a lot of the top like professional dunkers in the world, so not guys in the NBA, but professional dunkers, that's all they have to do. They often get to like double body weight in a deep squat. And Jonathan Edwards, my favorite like athletic change case, he still holds the world record in triple jump. So there's a guy named Jonathan Edwards. He was 19, hired a coach to pursue triple jump. Coach took him in for like orthopedic evaluation. And they said, the specialist, they said, don't even try to coach this guy in triple jump. He doesn't have the genetics for it. They said it's impossible. They said, based on his genetics, it's physically impossible for him to be a successful triple jumper. So the coach tells this kid this information. They're saying to not even pursue it. This 19-year-old says, I want to hire you anyways. I want to hire you to be my triple jump coach. So the coach realizes he's going to need a more unusual plan than he's ever put together. He's going to somehow have to change his strength levels. This guy did a very similar program for about 15 years. He got to the point where he could deep front squat, like a clean in Olympic lifting, like rock bottom, twice his body weight. So he was weighing like 170 pounds or something, deep cleaning over 300 pounds. As a triple jumper, where most people in the sport of triple jump do not try to get stronger in a deep position because it doesn't look like triple jump. His world record still stands. So when you take someone that genetically, according to specialists, can't even become competitive and their world record still stands, something unusual occurred there. And the unusual thing that occurred is he spent more time than anyone in triple jump history getting strong. Triple jump, your knees barely bend. So you would never think to do a deep squat. And he got to really elite levels, like a double body weight Olympic clean. That's like world-class strength levels in a deep front squat. So that's an example that for him, hey, he got to twice his weight. Some of these top pro dunkers are getting to twice their weight. It's really relative to your goal. I'm not trying to be a professional dunker. I'm also a volunteer basketball coach here. I'm a very skilled basketball player. I like to play basketball hard. That takes energy for me. So like I'm not trying to reach like my peak dunking as like a professional dunker or as a track athlete. For me, it's more like I want to be able to dunk easily off, whichever direction I'm going. When I'm playing basketball, if I juke and get past someone, I just want to be able to jump up there, and that's what I can do. I play with my high school guys once a week, so I was just kicking their butts one-on-one this weekend. They get to play against me once a week, and that's my style. I'm not just going to tell them. I'm going to show them. I just obliterated these high school kids this weekend, and I'm making move. The feeling as someone who can't naturally dunk, to make a move and go past someone, and before you know it, you slam and you're just hanging on the rim. To this day, it feels like a dream or something. So could I push my peak squat weight higher? Probably. Is it worth the risk to reward for me and my goals? No. I haven't had so much as an injury of any kind since having kids. I'm active with my kids every day. I've never had to say, Daddy can't pick you up. Daddy can't squat down and pick you up. Daddy can't go run with you.
So what's your body weight to squat ratio then at the moment? Because you are quite strong. I mean, I know it. I've seen you squat.
But here's what I found. I found that for me and my goals and my body type, the sweet spot for me is about 1.5 times my weight. But then how easy can I make that? So for me, it's less risk to reward of how many reps, how controlled, how low, how easy can I make 1.5 times my weight? Whereas if I was trying to go to the Olympics or be a professional dunker, a lot of those guys are getting to the 2 times body weight, which is its own. That's just going to take more focus. Some of these guys are often reaching out to me, some of these top guys. I've consulted various ones of them with knee pain. You take anything to like a true limit in any sport, like sprinters have some of the best hamstrings in the world. they still injure their hamstrings a ton because they're just pushing it to the absolute limit. If you want, you could follow a sprinter's training and sprint once a week at 85, 90% and have a great workout. That's more my philosophy. It's like, for me, it's more the longevity side. How easy can I do it without ever getting hurt?
Oh, I'm really happy to hear that, because my squat is just over 1.5 my body weight. I consider myself
Outstanding.
reasonably strong, and that's arse to grass, controlled, very comfortable.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, I'm not sort of shaking and bursting at the seams trying to do that. You know, I do that quite comfortable, because I had a severe back injury when I was 19 or so. Like, I walked with a limp for about 6 or 7 months, and I had to, it's one of the reasons why, like, your story really resonates with me, because I had to configure my own sort of rehabilitation program, because I was at 6 or 7 month mark. I think I was still limping, and I didn't have feeling in my 4th and 5th toes, and it was just horrendous. And I thought, I just can't keep going on like this. And I put together kind of a stretching and rehab sort of protocol that worked for me. And to this day, I still do the same sequence of stretches that, loosen up the lower back, then the hamstrings, then the quad, all that sort of stuff. How do I get onto that? Oh, yeah. So I'm very careful with my squat. For some reason, my leg press is so much more. I mean, I know it's meant to be stronger than your squat, but I looked up what should be the reasonable ratio. And they're like, well, for someone who's sort of an intermediate athlete who's been working out for a while, it should be like 2x your squat. I'm like, my squat isn't anywhere near half my leg press, and like, that's my leg press at 5 repetitions. It's not my 1 rep max, right? So I'm like, how do I bridge that gap? How do I get my squat to be stronger? Because clearly the strength is there to push the leg press at quite a bit, but like, my squat really lags that. And not for a lack of control or lack of form or anything like that. I'm like, I'm not sure. I think the legs get strong, but then the back feels like it's not going to hold up with it. And so I think it's the erectors, but I'm not sure. I don't know how do I do that?
So when you squat, you're having to dip into the legs and you have the back involved. Whereas the leg press, like, it holds your back. You're not having
Yeah.
to load the back.
Mhm.
So if you take the lower back portion of the squat, you have like a hinge. And if you actually, my best thread recently is like over 3 million views, and it's just on the exercise I'm describing to you. So if you sit, like, if you even sat on your chair, moved your legs out a bit, and then tried to bend down, that would be like a seated good morning if the weight was on your back, or
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
a seated deadlift. So you would, and so with the risk to reward thing, my favorite is that seated deadlift with dumbbells. So if you do a seated, the terminology, if something's a good morning, it means you're bending over with weight on your back. If you're picking it up, it's called a deadlift. People get lost in the terms. The terms don't really matter. You can call it a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever you want to call it. But if you sit at the edge of your chair right now and you put your heels out in front of your knees so that you can't use your legs to help, and you try to keep your posture as if you were squatting and bend over, you'll feel a deep stretch in the inner thighs. And by loading it, you now have an isolated lower back exercise. That's the lower back's portion of the squat. So you'll feel a deep stretch, like it's a squat mobility exercise, but for the hips and lower back. And it's very advantageous for holding dumbbells, because as you go lower to the floor, it gets safer because you could let the dumbbells down. Whereas if you do a good morning with the weight on your back, the lower you go, it gets scarier. So people hold back from the very range that I'm trying to train. Meaning, if you just want maximal back strengthening, the deadlift is advantageous to just maximal strengthening. But if you want to get strength in that deep position that you're going to be in at the bottom of a squat for the lower back, that's a seated deadlift. So it's different than the leg positioning. Like a regular deadlift, maybe you're like this. Seated deadlift, that's the closest, it's literally the closest you can get your torso to your thighs while still holding your lower back posture. So for you, if you wanted to improve the lower back's ability in the deep squat, seated dumbbell deadlift, great stretch for the inner thighs, go until the lower back muscles are getting a burn, get the lower back muscles, the erectors, as you said, get them stronger. If you go to a gym, they're going to have heavy enough dumbbells to challenge that.
What sort of loading should you be looking for compared to body weight, for example?
Always variable by person, but I think roughly if someone is like, what are you?
I'm about 90 kilos, which is
Okay, so
over 180 pounds, I think.
let's say you can squat 300, right? Let's just say deep, just for the sake of keeping the math
Sure.
really simple.
Yep.
All right. If you can squat 300 deep, then holding 10-pound dumbbells might feel nice to warm up or something, but that's not going to prepare you for a 300-pound squat. You're going to need like at least half that weight. So like 75 pounds per hand. But again, for the purposes of this, the advantage is the stretch, the safety, the normally when people deadlift, they go up, right? And then it just like crashes back down. No, with this, you're under tension the entire time. So the advantage is an accessory exercise to strengthen the erectors while working the exact mobility you'll need at the bottom of the squat. So I think build 75 pounds each hand to where you can do 10 to 20 reps with that. I think that's a good
20
baseline.
reps of that. Okay, so 150 pounds in my hand. Okay. Wow.
You'll probably feel that amazing mobility, my overall favorite lower back health exercise, because yes, people are aware lower back strengthening helps lower back, but until you coach people and you see so many people with super strong lower back still needing to get back surgeries, it starts being like, wait, what? How are you so strong and you need painkillers because your back is so bad? You start to see a huge gap in the strength in the deep ranges. Same with the knee. Like someone can be super athletic and jump super high and then be having knee injuries. You start to notice that there becomes this huge gap in the strength in those deep positions. Kids are actually crazy strong. It only occurred to me from having kids and observing, like little kids are stronger than adults proportionally in deep positions. Like if you tested a little kid, they can deep squat like butter, but they can't deadlift very much weight yet.
I'm trying to remember if it was your kid doing the lifting like a ball off the ground. I'm not sure. I saw a kid doing that. I'm like, hang on, you're not even a year old and you're deadlifting that.
Right. It's shocking how strong little kids are in deep positions. So they're just so protected in these vulnerable positions. You get so that's why for me, that's why that dumbbell seated deadlift, that is the most fundamental missing area of ability for people with the lower back. That's the place I would start. There's still then, I feel like if you wanted a number 2 accessory, so then you would use a back extension machine, which is also going to be advantageous for the erectors, but it's not going to be as squat specific. So I feel like the biggest loss people have is the strength in the deep position, seated dumbbell deadlift. And then for good measure, and I've done threads on both of those just in the last week. The podcast is probably going to bore a lot of people, and I apologize for that. But hopefully,
I don't think it will. You don't understand Bitcoiners. There's quite a large segment of Bitcoiners who talk about eating meat, taking creatine, and squatting and lifting really heavy. So it's going to be really popular with them, that's for sure. I wanted to ask that I go to a gym that's kind of what I call pussified. You know, it's not really a heavy lifting gym. But one of the things that we do have is a 45-degree back extension. I load that by holding weights in my hand, but like, okay, I can hold 70 kilos in my hand. There's a sort of limit to that. How much? Like it's difficult to load beyond that, and I find that too easy. I get to like 7, 8, 9, 10 reps. I'm like, I can't hold anymore. How do I load it more? I think your suggested exercise is a really good way for me to train essentially the same muscles in terms of the lower back. But will it engage the hamstrings in that way, or will I have to do something more like Nordic curls?
Seated
I'm
dumbbell
really weak
deadlift.
in the Nordics. I'm really weak there.
Yeah. We'll take it 1, 2, 3. Seated dumbbell deadlift is going to be more foundational, really precisely measurable on your strength. That 45 back extension machine, what makes that so advantageous is not training for maximal strength on it. But there is a way you can actually still go to a good burnout. What makes that machine really advantageous is the bottom and the top positions, meaning take that top position. That top position, because of the angle, if you really squeeze the glutes in that position and hold it there for a few seconds each rep, you're going to be surprised how much of a difference that makes. That's a position that we're not getting with a lot of other exercises, is strength and extension. So for me, I have a totally different viewpoint when it comes to the 45-degree back extension. With the 45-degree back extension, it's not how much weight can I lift, it's actually how hard can I make a lesser weight. So if it's 2 legs for a man, I don't think you ever need to hold more than a 45-pound plate. How hard can you make a 45-pound plate? How hard can you squeeze at the top? How long can you squeeze at the top each rep? How many reps can you do? I've never seen a guy that can hold a 45-pound plate and do 20 reps at the bottom. How far can you stretch at the bottom? That's the other huge advantage and a huge thing that really confuses even top experts on the lower back who still can't quite figure it out. If you just tried to pick up a deadlift with a rounded back, yeah, I think there will be more chance of injury than lifting with good posture. But if you now have nothing in your regimen where your spine gets to flex, I see that becomes a huge problem. I'm answering these private questions of top coaches. There are top coaches out there having back surgeries, and I look over their entire regimen, and there is nothing where the spine gets to flex at all. So again, because of that angle, look at the bottom position. You're now in a less stressful position because your body's like almost vertical at the bottom. So it's more of a gentle stretch, and you're not lifting with a curled back. It's your ability to come out of a rounded position. So if you want lower back health, it's ability to resist rounding and the ability to go into and out of a rounded position. It's not one or the other. So that seated dumbbell deadlift is all about resisting rounding. I think that's more fundamental to resist rounding. The 45-degree then gives you a beautiful opportunity at the bottom for a stretch, which you can do either. So I say for you, it's one of 2 options. You either do up to 20 reps with a 45-pound plate, stretching at the bottom, squeezing the glutes to the top. You'll be stunned. I mean, like, how hard can you make that? You'll be smoked. Or do one side at a time, only body weight, and when you go to the bottom, grab hold of that bar and stretch at the bottom.
So you mean like hang one leg out and just do with one leg? Okay, got that.
Yeah. So I'll take one leg, I'll go down, grab that pole, and get an amazing hamstring stretch at the bottom. It's a beautiful opportunity to stretch the hamstring. Then let go, come up, squeeze the glute at the top. Beautiful opportunity to strengthen that extended position. So you now put together seated dumbbell deadlift with that back extension, and you're hitting so many of the abilities. You now can have flexible hamstrings, flexible inner thighs, strong glutes, strong hamstrings, strong lower back in deep positions without rounding, deep position rounded, but very strategically safe in that position. Also why so 45-degree, either up to 45-pound plate, 2 legs, or 1 leg without weight, and see how challenging you can make it by emphasizing the stretch and emphasizing the squeeze at the top.
So would there be any additional benefit to also using the Jefferson curl in that routine? If I've got those 2 exercises, there's no real, because we're doing everything anyway, aren't we, right?
Bingo.
Yeah. Okay.
Bingo. So yeah, and that's where, so Jefferson curl does work. However, it's more scary for people. It is less, you can get into that rounded position in Jefferson curl, but this is going to be a bit scarier for people than when you get in the 45-degree, you're almost resting at the bottom.
Yeah.
And the Jefferson curl, you're coming back to the top, but again, with the 45-degree, you're coming back to the top with strength through the glutes and the lower back muscle. So honestly, you could almost call the way that I do a back extension, you could almost call it a Jefferson back extension. So I think that the Jefferson curl is great. I think really any human movement is great if you understand it and use it and know how to use it for its purposes. But the back extension is just so advantageous, so affordable. It's so that the back extension, I would just rather teach someone how to do a Jefferson curl on a back extension with
Sure.
more total benefits, can train one side at a time. Just, yeah.
Okay, so I'm strong now. I've covered up my weaknesses. I'm doing my Nordic curls. I'm doing the 45-degree back extension, and I'm doing the seated deadlift. Good mornings, right? Great.
Beautiful, beautiful regimen for the
How
backside
do
work.
I start jumping?
Number one, how bad do you really want to jump? Because again, it's like jumping. If you look out in nature, we would have to sprint from time to time. You wouldn't have to do a ton of jumping. There's not like raw footage of people out there doing like a perfect approach jump to grab an apple or something. No, but like you got to run. Like, so the jumping is, I think it's important to just be aware that if you're going to go after jumping, do you understand it's a bit more extreme. Now, for someone who simply wants to pursue it anyways, knowing that it's more extreme, get your adrenaline up first and don't overly tire yourself out. So this would be like play a little pickup basketball with some friends, or a little bit of one-on-one with a friend, with you know, not like take breaks between. If it's one-on-one with just one person, do some short games, take some breaks. Like, you're trying, it's almost like, can you get your adrenaline up without getting too tired? This way, having some adrenaline is going to be a little bit of a, you're going to get the circulation that you want, because now with the knee, it's not just muscles. Now we're going tendons, ligaments. We're going to very, very high impact, and you want to be really mentally sharp. And then it's a matter of like, do like a few jump attempts. And what I have people do is, people tend to have like a way that they like to jump. So do a few of those and then do a few of the opposite. So like if you step left, right, and reach with the right hand, then also do the same number of reps right, left with the left hand. Because when you jump, every time you jump, that has the potential to adapt. And so I've also found with people who spend a lot of time jumping, they often have like mysterious, like they'll have one quad will be like, I've trained some top jumpers with very little weightlifting history, but they just grew up like dunking was life. Guys sometimes have 1 or 2 inch bigger quads on one side than the other. And so they wonder why their knee hurts. But if you watch their jumps, they jump the same way every time. So you've got like one leg is bending more, one is the landing leg. And this has been well proven even in soccer, football. They've found that like the more significant the difference between your kick leg and your plant leg, you actually have like more chance of knee injury, just like different stability in the knee. So with this whole theme of balance, do 3 reps of what your desired jump is, and then as a balance factor for the general long-term health, to make sure things are staying balanced, then do 3 reps of the opposite of that.
So I often see people at the gym doing all sorts of biometric, isometric stuff, one leg first and then the other, and then double legs, jumping onto these platforms, off them, etc. Do you have like a recommended series of jumps that I need to incorporate, or do you just, it's not really necessary if your purpose is to dunk, for example?
Yeah, if your purpose is to dunk, the most important jump is the dunk. And the basketball warm-up will give all these plyometric forces, left and right and up and down. So then when people are talking about plyometrics, they're just referring to any of this type of shock training. And so that can all still be valid. Like, it's still in the same category as the jumping. I've just found it less effective than the actual jump that you want to do in your sport. And I think the more underrated part is that plyometrics are easier to make balanced. Like, let's say I have you do skipping. Like, skipping's a great drill. And it's very balanced, skip on each leg. So if you now go into a sport and you do a jump only to one side, like if you only jump off your left leg, then you might run into some issues you wouldn't run into if you were skipping and doing it balanced. So if you do the jump and you keep the jumps balanced, I do think that's the most effective route to get to the dunk. However, if you didn't want to dunk that week and you wanted to just do some general jumping, then that's a whole wonderful field of exercises, provided you do it like in moderation, recover from it. The general formula I have people do is I have them run backwards, then run sideways. Like, you maybe did some of those warm-ups, like kind of side shuffling or whatever you want to do sideways, but go backward first. That's like gentlest. Then go sideways. Then go forward. And before you like go forward too fast, like sprint before you skip. So that's generally how I teach people is backward before sideways, sideways before forward, skip before sprint. And then sprinting is a great drill. Or at that point, you could practice some jumping. After the skipping is like this really nice, balanced, low grade jumping drill. So it doesn't have to be super complicated. Once you get into like the bounding type stuff, definitely higher forces. Like I've seen a lot of people get injured doing the higher force stuff too soon, not fully understanding what they're doing, the forms. Even some of those forms can be difficult to master. So that's why I really like the skipping as a foundation. Like you could just build up to the skipping for a few months and get tons of adaptation in your legs without trying to do more complex drills. So there's what can work fastest tends to have higher chance of injury, and then by doing it, let yourself recover, you tend to get much more of a chance of like a long-term result.
Yeah. I think that sounds like a really well-rounded program, and it just popped into my mind. Would the split squat add any benefit to the objective of wanting to dunk?
In my opinion, it helps a little bit more than just squatting because of the hip flexibility. And when you just do a standing vertical jump straight up, don't the hips don't stretch as far back. But when you actually run and approach into a jump, great jumpers, the legs really like extend back. They use the butt muscles, the hamstrings. You'll see that midair, their legs are not just straight. The legs are like cocked back. And also I think that for goals like that, recovery is really helps to be fresh, to not be overtrained. So like I would rather see someone have their squat session and either as accessory or separately work on the deep split squat just for good measure to get extra results without like overtraining the squat. So yes, I personally believe there's better results from deep squat and deep split squat once a week each rather than one or the other.
Hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to give it a go. Ben, how have you found the business challenges in growing what you've got? Because I think what you've done is fantastic in such a short period of time, and you've got a huge presence on Instagram. Do you have a presence on or large presence on anything other than X and Instagram? YouTube you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so Instagram, YouTube, X are three very different platforms.
Hmm.
Um, Facebook, you can just post your same Instagram videos.
Have you had
TikTok,
much traction on that and TikTok in
I've
particular?
I've got about 800,000 followers each on Facebook and TikTok. I've never even used those platforms. I just post the same videos.
So
So,
do you use a social media manager to just replicate your posts across all those, or how do you
and
do
I
it?
do all my posting.
Oh, okay. No, no, no. I don't mean a hired employee. I mean the software tool where
Nope.
whatever you're posting on X,
No,
it just goes straight
no,
onto the.
I just go manually post it.
Okay, all right. Well, that might cut a bit of
It's like,
time if you just if you fork out a bit of money, Ben. You can use a software tool like a Hootsuite, for example, that when you're posting on one platform, you can use the same format to just go and also post it there, and just saves you some time.
it's good advice. I find that like different platforms, you title things a bit differently. Like Instagram, people will still read a little bit more what you write underneath it. Facebook Reels, it just gives you like a title. There's not like room to write about it. And I feel like the Facebook crowd is a little bit older, so I might give it like a more gentler, elderly focused title. And then TikTok, I don't know what's going on over there. I'll usually just copy and paste the Instagram. I mean,
It's basically
um,
the same thing, but I guess it skews a little bit younger. But the format in terms of
yeah,
shorts, it's
exactly. I
yeah.
might title like sometimes I'll title it a bit younger viewpoint for for TikTok, but it only takes a minute. each one. So it's not, I agree. You probably could save me time, but we're only talking about a minute on Facebook and a minute on TikTok. That's
And you
it.
like to customize and put the personal touch on it anyway. But look, you've got a huge, it's a massive presence. I mean, I don't know too many people, like only the really big podcasters and celebrities, of course, but we're not talking about them. Only the really massive podcasters have that scale of presence across all of those channels. Have you got sort of any plans or ambitions to, I guess, not take advantage of that, but expand the way in which you reach out? Do you have like some kind of plan to expand on that? Or it's just
Yeah.
you're just coaching people, and if people want to follow, they can follow?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's more like what what's the purpose of what I'm doing? And then social media platforms will come and go or change or this or that. So I just have to be up to date enough to try to put it into that format. But honestly, there's plenty of fitness content creators who do a much better job than me on the trends, and their engagement is way higher. I actually don't have like remarkable engagement because so many of my posts are really boring coaching details. They're not like really, so sometimes this stuff goes viral, but people would be surprised how rarely my content goes viral because so much of it is like I know making it that it's just not going to be a viral video. But but as different coaching points are occurring, that like this can be helpful. So 90% of my content I know is not going to go viral to begin with. And then maybe 10% I'm like, this one might actually have a chance of doing well. And it's more just like I think it's grown so well because of people actually using the data. So the average, my average views and that kind of stuff and comments have never been very high, but I feel like people in the real world are actually using the information, and so
Yeah,
it keeps growing that way. But it's here's the thing though, like my wife is the one who likes business, so I I don't have magical advice for people. I've been pretty, I wouldn't say awful at business, but more like it's just not my hunger. And so like I've turned over pretty much all the business stuff to her, and she's amazing, and she will run it. She will run the business details much better than me. For me, it's like I never needed much, so I just want it all to be with the integrity I want, like actually helping people, just kind of a slow and steady approach like that. Like I don't want more. I just want it all to eventually just want it to be stable. I don't want more, just stable.
I get you. I mean, you focus on the product, focus on the audience and the target market, and helping people really. And so you don't let anything sort of pollute or interfere with your intentions, and that really comes across. I want to thank you so much for making the time to talk to me today. It's been a wonderful conversation with a little bit of personal advice, and I didn't realize you were a Bitcoiner, and I didn't want to ask, but every now and then, I guess will tell me. So that was a really nice surprise as well. Can you tell us a little bit about where you would like people to find you, what your handles are on your preferred channels? We're happy to put them in the show notes so more people on Twitter, Bitcoiners, can follow you as well, because I think you do a world of good for people, and the culture tends to be really interested in health and well-being and that sort of thing. And I think you'd be a great place for people to go to.
Super appreciate that. Yeah. Um, Look up knees over toes. I think it's knees over toes G on X
Okay.
because they only give you a
I'll put it.
limited
I'll
number
put
of
it in.
characters, but it should pop up. I do think that X is my best content right now because when you're trying to learn this stuff, it's just so helpful to have each one in a slide with a visual that then you can read along at your own pace. So yeah, X is the best platform to learn, I think, right now.
Excellent. All right, we'll tag you in the show notes, and when we post the interview, I'll let you know as well. Thanks, man. It's been fantastic meeting you and talking to you. It's a real pleasure of mine.
As a Bitcoiner, I was honored when you reached out. I was stoked, and so I really appreciate it. And especially finding out that this podcast is new for you, I'm honored to be one of the first guests. Congratulations on your success with this, helping people with Bitcoin. Yeah, we should catch up again next year, see where Bitcoin's at. And
Definitely. Thanks,
yeah,
Ben.
yeah. All right. See ya.